Take a breath and dive into Ocean Ideas, the podcast where scientists, ocean advocates, and big thinkers share powerful insights into our blue planet. In today's episode, Mark Rowland explores how human activity is disrupting Earth's natural balance and what we can do to restore it.
So I'm really excited to speak to you. I've spent 25 years studying this topic. I was lucky enough to study at MIT in 1999 with a group of people that had created this amazing simulation of Earth and all of Earth's different systems and how it all worked together to try and create balance on our planet. And they also wrote a book called The Limits to Growth, which then became Beyond the Limits to Growth, as we kind of surpassed the capacity of our planet to withstand the amount of us as humans that are actually living on this planet. So I'm going to share some insights with you, some of the things that I guess I studied as I was really interested in this topic. It went all the way back 4.7 billion years ago, where I started my research. Sadly, I couldn't time travel back, but in terms of what I've read, that's when our planet was formed. So 4.7 billion years ago, our planet was this hot, molten sphere with lots of asteroids bashing into it. One of the biggest ones that bashed into it created the moon. So that's where the moon was formed. And 4 billion years ago, our planet started to cool down. And all these volcanoes were erupting all over the planet. And that's where the oceans were formed from. A lot of water vapor kind of erupted with the volcanoes. And because the surface of the Earth was cooling down, it created the oceans that we have today. 3 billion years ago, life started on our planet. So in the oceans, we had these cyanobacteria that actually took the predominant gas in the atmosphere at the time, which was carbon dioxide, and then turned that into oxygen, which led to the great oxygenation event. So I was really interested in listening to P before. So the great oxygenation event created the vast amounts of oxygen that existed in the atmosphere, which then gave rise to multicellular life. Our planet, over the last 600 million years, has sustained roughly the same amount of nitrogen, carbon dioxide, oxygen, inert gases in our atmosphere, which then led to all the evolution that happened on our planet and all the animals and everything that we see on our planet today. And our planet pretty much stayed in homeostasis as we were evolving, but in terms of the atmosphere, in terms of this balance of life that existed on the planet, everything was kept in balance. So it's self-regulated. One of my mentors is a guy called James Lovelock. He died, sadly, a couple of years ago on his 103rd birthday. In 1960, or the late 1960s, he was asked by NASA to go and try and find life on other planets in our galaxy. And because he was an amazing lateral thinker, instead of thinking, I'm going to sit here on Earth and look at all these planets in our galaxy and see if I can find life, he said, well, why don't I just pretend I'm on the other side of the galaxy looking back at our solar system? I'm going to have a look at Mars, I'm going to look at Venus, I'm going to have a look at Earth to see whether there's life. And obviously he had a bit of an advantage. He knew there was no life on Venus and Mars. He knew there was life on Earth. But he was trying to figure out what it was about our planet that was different. And he came to the conclusion that it was life. The life on our planet interacting with the oceans, interacting with geology, interacting with the rivers, that actually kept our atmosphere at balance, at just the right level to allow life to evolve on our planet. Keeping oxygen around about 21%, because if it went too high, we had too many fires on the planet, and too many large organisms would grow. If it went too low, that would be bad too. So we kept the oxygen at pretty much the same level. We kept the salinity of the oceans at pretty much the same level. And he was curious how that would actually happen. How is it that a planet could actually self-regulate? And he came to the conclusion, like I said, that it was life. And he created a hypothesis called the GAIA Hypothesis, which he was ridiculed for by a lot of his scientific community friends, that he was a bit of a crackpot, that no way was Earth a living organism, no way was life interacting with all these different geophysical activities on our planet. I'm pleased to say that before he died, it was accepted that his theories were actually accurate. So when he was in his 80s, he was accepted by the scientific community. So what I've done over the last few years is try to figure out what is it that we could do as a species, this human species that we are, to try and get ourselves back into balance. Because we've clearly, as a species, our growth on this planet has gone to 8 billion people. It wasn't that long ago, there were less than 1 billion people on our planet. And one of the scariest stats that I discovered was the ratio of human domesticated animals to wild animals, which a couple of thousand years ago was like negligible, 0 to 1 really, is now 15 to 1. 96% of all the animals by weight on this planet are human domesticated animals. Only 4% are wild. It's quite staggering. The impact that one species, ours, has had on this planet. I don't know whether we should be proud or whether we should look back and have some self-reflection. But I then tried to figure out, well, what is it? How could I use my systems thinking skills? How could I use my business skills? How could I use my community development skills to try and figure out what exactly is it that we could do? How could we address this? So I came up with 7 imperatives, and I'll share them with you today. The first imperative is that we need to have new measures of success. The measure of success that we have as a species on our planet, if you watch the news every day, is literally the economy. GDP, inflation, they're the only things that seem to matter. The craziness of GDP is that if I said to my wife, I'm going to maximize GDP for our family, all I'm going to do is go and buy stuff. I'm going to borrow loads of money that I probably can't repay. I'm not going to worry about the kids' education. I'm not going to worry about our health. I'm not even going to buy food. I'm just going to buy lots and lots and lots of stuff. By GDP, that would be a success. So clearly we need some better measures of success for our species than just economic ones. There's lots of really good ones out there, but that's one of the first imperatives. The second imperative is we need to start pricing things appropriately. At the moment, we do not do that. We don't price the ecological cost of things. We don't price the social cost of things. If we were to put in, say, a carbon price on a lot of the materials that we buy, we probably wouldn't buy extra cars. We wouldn't buy extra products. We wouldn't travel around the world as we do. We wouldn't do a lot of things because it would be too expensive, because the price of things would have helped us to keep everything in balance. But we don't. Everything is super cheap. So the second imperative is we need to start pricing things appropriately. The third imperative is we need to get back to some level of community and collaboration. We just heard an amazing talk that talked about community. I live next door to a bunch of people on my street. I have a whippersnipper, I have a lawnmower, I have a blower. My next door neighbor has a lawnmower, a whippersnipper, a hedge trimmer, and a blower. The neighbor on the other side has a lawnmower, a whippersnipper. Why don't we just share our tools? Why have we created this society where it's okay just to hoard stuff for ourselves? And you can extrapolate that from my family to my community, to my country, to the world. So what is it that we can do to actually build community, share resources, and actually realize that if we're all in this together, we need to actually help each other? The fourth imperative is that we really need to realize that humanity is part of nature. For too long, we've thought that we're above nature, that nature is just this unlimited source of resource that we can work from, unlimited amount of animals that we can just disrupt. And then once we've used stuff, we just think that nature is this unlimited landfill that we can actually throw stuff away into. So we really need to connect that dot. We need to realize that nature, we are part of it. We're not above it. We don't rule it. We don't control it. And if we did that, just like we just heard from Jody, there's lots of things that we will probably do that will be different to how we're behaving today. The fifth imperative is we need to decarbonize and get rid of all these greenhouse gas emissions that we have. And more than that, we need to actually start sucking out some of the greenhouse gases that are already in our atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is measured in parts per million. So at the moment, we have 430 parts per million of carbon dioxide. That's 0.043% of the atmosphere. Never in the last million years have we ever got to that level. on our planet. So for 1 million years, we've managed to keep carbon dioxide below 300 parts per million until 1911, when we surpassed that. And we've never gone backwards. And it's forecast that it's going to be 600 parts per million by the end of the century. So double any level of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere in the last 1 million years, which to me is, it's staggering that one species can have that much of an impact on our planet. But if the temperature gets to that level, or carbon dioxide gets to that level, the impact that's going to have on our entire planet is going to be catastrophic. So again, what can we as humans do as an imperative to actually reduce that? The sixth one is we need to adapt to the changing climate. We've obviously climate change is among us. We're witnessing the impacts of it, more bushfires, more droughts, more storms. We need to be able to adapt to that. How can we use human ingenuity and innovation to actually help us to withstand? We will need probably drought-tolerant crops. We will need water defences. We will need better levees on our rivers because we've impacted our planet so much, but we do need to adapt to that. And then the final one is hopefully an optional one, but it's we need to be ready for geoengineering. It'll be too late once we realise that all of this stuff has happened for us to think about geoengineering. So some of the geoengineering that I'm really interested in is the off-planet kind of solar shading technology, which could potentially help us, give Gaia a bit of a breath, but could also be turned off, rather than some of the other geoengineering that we see, which if we actually unleash it on our planet, we might not be able to turn it around. So they're the 7 imperatives that I've been studying and researching that I wanted to really share with you all today. The time for action is now. And what I would encourage any of you to do is maybe think of one of those imperatives that you might be able to actually impact, do something. And once you do something, then share that with others so that we can actually get some inspiration, because that reinforcing loop will be unstoppable. Thank you.
Hey, I was just wanting a little more detail on your qualification of 90%, 96% of all animals are human domesticated animals. Does that include humans? And is that comparing it to, are they mammals? Like what?
Does not include
what are we
humans, and
okay.
it's by weight. Weight. I can share with you the scientific paper that came from. It's 2 years old, but it's a pretty scary statistic. And a lot of it is because our domesticated animals like cows and sheep require lots of land, so we chop down lots of forests for them, and then we actually lose all the other animals that would have lived there. We're overfishing, we're overeating, we're overdoing pretty much everything because there's so many of us.
Yeah, just wanted to ask you about geoengineering that you mentioned. What's involved in that, and what's the purpose of it? What's the technology?
So there's a lot of different technologies. Some of them are really scary, and some of them not so. But basically, it's us trying to become Mother Nature and controlling the planet ourselves. So one of the technologies is pumping lots and lots and lots of sulfur into the atmosphere. Because whenever there's been sulfur in the atmosphere, these mega volcanoes that release lots and lots and lots of sulfur, the temperature on Earth dropped. So the theory is just figure out a way of pumping megatons of sulfur into the atmosphere and then hope for the best. It's pretty hard to test it outside of a lab. So that would be an example of something that if we did that, and then usually human solutions is usually creates unintended consequences, as we know. So I guess one thing I don't really want to see is, mass geoengineering project that is irreversible that could cause more damage than it tried to save. Whereas off-planet geoengineering is potentially like putting a solar shade to prevent some of the sun's rays from hitting our planet, which would do the same thing. It would reduce the solar impact and reduce the temperature on Earth, but would be reversible. We could turn it off. But all these things cost a lot of money, as you can imagine. But I kind of figured it's better to be prepared for it now than go, oh, shoot, I really wish 50 years ago we'd started thinking about geoengineering, because we might need it at that point. But great question. Thank you.
If you learned something new today, make sure to share it with someone else who cares, because the better people understand the ocean, the better we can protect it.